Alright, so the title of this is polynomials. So polynomials cover a lot of different equations, okay? And then the first type we're going to talk about is called a monomial. Do you guys know what this prefix mono means?
Like,
Yeah, what did you say?
one.
Yeah, one, okay? So it's a number or variable or combination of numbers and variables with whole number exponents, and it's going to be one term, okay? So we're going to put that in parentheses. It's one term. Okay, and then the degree of a monomial is something that we're going to talk about. So every equation has what's called a degree, okay? And if it's of a monomial, you can find the degree by adding all of the exponents together. Okay, and it's the exponents of the variables only. Okay, so if there's a number, it's not of the number, it's only of your variables. Alright, so we're going to do the first one together. Okay, so example 1, identify the degree of each monomial. Okay, so like I said, if it's a number, we are not going to add those together. So we have the 4 and we have the 3. So the degree, you just add them together. So we would say the degree is 7. Okay, and that's all you have to do, is you just have to add those together, okay? Alright, now if you don't see a variable, what is the degree on E? If you can't see it, what is it? Yep, it's e to the first. And you can't see it on D either, so that's d to the first. Okay, so when you're finding the degree, you're just going to add 1 plus 1. So the degree for this one is 2. Okay, and then the last one. If there are no variables, the degree is 0. Okay, so if there's no variables, the degree is 0. So each one of these has a special name. If the degree is 0, it's called a constant term. That's because this is never going to change. It's always going to be 3. Okay, so an example would be, like if you just have the number 1, that would be a constant. Or it could be the number 7. Okay, so any number is going to be a constant. Okay, the next one is if it has a degree of 1, that is called linear. And it might be just like this. It might just be an x. That would be an example. Or you can have a combination. You could have 2x plus 1. You can have numbers mixed in with it. So this would have a degree of 1 and this would have a degree of 1. Okay, quadratic has a degree of 2. So you could have x to the second. Or you could have a mixture. So you could have like 3x squared plus x minus 2. Okay, the degree of this is not a monomial. When they're not a monomial, your degree is going to be the highest number, which we're going to talk about. Okay, and then cubic is going to be x to what power? 3. So we can write this as x cubed Or you could have like x cubed minus 2x squared plus 5. Okay, so you can have a combination of any of those. Okay, so make sure you're writing this down with me. Okay, and then we have a quartic. Okay, so a quartic, okay, the prefix is quart. That means there's going to be 4. And so that one, you can have x to the 4th. Or, and then you can have a combination. I usually, when you see them, they're usually in the front, but you could also have one like this. See where you have the 4 in the back? Okay, so as long as there's an exponent of 4 in it, and that's your highest exponent, okay, that's what you're going to have there. Okay, and then x to the 5th. You can also have negative values like x to the 5th plus 2x minus 3. And that's called a quintic. Okay, the quint, that means 5. Okay, and then there's 6th degree, 7th degree, it just keeps going. So you could have x to the 6th or x to the 7th. Okay, and again, you can have, and then you can have numbers with those as well, okay, and other variables. All right, so when you're classifying by degree, the important thing is that for polynomials, not monomials, but polynomials, the degree is the highest exponent. Okay, so the degree is the highest exponent. Okay, so you're not adding them together in a polynomial. So the highest exponent here is 1. This one is 2. This one is 3. This one is 4, 5. And then I showed you several on the bottom. Okay, so you're going to find what the highest exponent is here. Okay, and then one thing we're going to do today is we are going to classify by terms. Okay, so we're going to use the degree and we're going to use the terms. You can determine how many terms there are because they are separated by a plus or a minus. Okay, terms are separated by a plus or minus. Okay, so that's a plus and not a T. Okay, so it's a plus or a minus. All right, so like we said earlier, a monomial is one term. What do you guys think a binomial is? Okay, so I think most of you probably have a bicycle, right? How many wheels does it have? 2. So a binomial has 2 terms. A trinomial has 3 terms. Yeah, the tri. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good one. I was thinking tricycle. Trident's a good one too. Okay, and then these are the only ones that have special names, a monomial, a binomial, and a trinomial. If there's more than 3 terms, so if there's 4 or more terms, we just call it a polynomial. Okay, and then we're going to put in an example for each one. So if there's one term, okay, you can have a number in front, you can have an exponent, you can have a variable, you can have all of those together, okay? If there are two terms, there has to be either a plus or a minus between two of them. So it could be 3x cubed, and then you add another term or subtract. So this would be 1, 2 terms. Okay, this would be the first term, this would be the second. If there are 3 terms, there has to be either 2 pluses or a plus and a minus. Okay, could look like this. Okay, where this is your first term, this is your second term, this is your third term. So 1, 2, 3 terms, and then we're going to do one with 4. Okay, so that could look like this. X to the 4th minus x cubed plus x squared minus 5. Okay, and the way that we would name this is a polynomial with 4 terms. We're going to need that for our next part. Okay, so a polynomial with 4 terms. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, and then we're going to turn it over for the example that we're doing today. Okay, so it says rewrite each polynomial in standard form. So as you move up in your math classes, polynomials are often given to you in standard form, and so we also want to write them in standard form. So what that means, it says, what do the directions mean by standard form? What that means is you start with the highest exponent. Okay, so you start with the highest exponent. And you continue in decreasing order. So you start with the highest one, then you find the next highest and keep going to the lowest. So you start with the highest exponent and then continue in decreasing order. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do. Then it says we have to identify the leading coefficient, the degree, which is what we just talked about, and the number of terms. So there's 3 things: the leading coefficient, the degree, and the number of terms. Okay, and then it says to classify. Have you guys done any classifications in science this year? Like of different kingdoms? What? I think they usually do that in biology. Most of you guys are in physical science, right? So the word classify means you are just going to write their name. Okay, so when you classify, you're just going to write their name according to 2 things: the degree and the number of terms. Okay? So for the first one, I've listed out for you everything that we have to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to write it in standard form. So standard form means you start with the highest exponent. So the highest exponent is going to be 3. Now this term has a negative in front of it, so when you're writing that in standard form, you have to write negative 5x cubed first. Now after 3, the next highest one is squared, so that's going to be plus 4x squared. Okay, so this is your second term. And then your last term is the 3. It's a positive, so I'm going to put a plus in front. Okay, so this is your answer for standard form. Okay, now the degree is just the highest exponent. Okay, so Gabe, if I'm looking at this, what's my highest exponent that we see? Yep, it's just 3. Okay, so the degree is always the highest exponent. So once you put it in standard form, it really should be the first one that you see. Okay, the leading coefficient is the first number in standard form. Okay, so the leading coefficient is the first number when you put this in standard form. And we can abbreviate this, the standard ST. So when you put it in standard form, okay, remember coefficients, the number in front of the variable. So this is standard form. The first number that we have, negative 5. Okay, so that's our leading coefficient. Okay, and then the number of terms, they are separated with the plus or minus. So I have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. Okay, so those are separated with a plus or a minus. Okay, so when you are writing the name, your name has 2 things to it. 1, 2. So I want you to put 2 blank spaces. Okay, the first part of the name is based on the degree, and the second part of the name is based on the terms. Okay, so the first part of the name is the degree, the second part of the name is the number of terms. Okay, so we know the degree is 3. So let's go back to our chart on the other side. Okay, if the degree is 3, the name is cubic. Okay, so you can find it in your table. So the first part of the name is cubic. And then the terms, in this case there's 3. So again, we can flip it over to the front. You have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. If it's 3 terms, it's a trinomial. Okay, so that's its name. So when you're doing this, you would just write down cubic trinomial. Okay, that is the name of this polynomial. Okay, so for part B, we're going to write those down as well. And so we're just going to abbreviate. So the first thing we're going to do is write it in standard form. Okay, so standard form has to start with the largest exponent, and sometimes it's already in standard form. This one is in standard form already, so you're just going to rewrite it how it is. If it's already in standard form, that's okay. Okay, and then what I want you to do is I want you to do the degree, the leading coefficient, the number of terms, okay, and then if you feel like you can do the name after that, go ahead. It just has 2 parts to it. Okay, so degree, leading coefficient, number. Right, so make sure you guys are writing this down. So the degree is the highest exponent. So of the 2 exponents we have a 6, and this would be a 1. So the highest exponent is 6. So that's your degree. Okay? The leading coefficient is the first number in standard form. So this is standard form. What's the first number? 8. Okay, the number of terms, they're separated by a plus or a minus. How many terms do I have there? 2. Yep. This is the first term, this is the second term. So there's 2 terms. Okay, now the name is based on 2 things. The degree, which we just said is 6, and then the terms, which we just said is 2. Okay, so for the degree, let's use our chart. Okay, so if the degree is 6 or more, we just call it the 6th degree, 7th degree. Okay, so the name is going to be the 6th degree. And then if it's 2 terms, okay, again, we can look back here. 2 terms is called a binomial. Okay, so 6th degree binomial. Okay, so that's what it's called. Okay, so when you're writing this down, it's just 6th degree binomial. That's how you'd write your answer on the line. Okay? Okay, and then for part C, we're going to do the same thing. So you can abbreviate like I am. So we're going to have to do standard form, the degree, the LCOs, the leading coefficient, and then the terms. Okay, so let's pick out the highest exponent. Okay, so keep just looking at this. Which one's your highest exponent? 4. Okay, so that is going to help us in 2 ways. First, that's going to be the degree, right? It's going to be 4. Okay, be with me? Okay. And then, so if that's the highest exponent, x to the 4th, that goes first. Okay, and then Gabe, after 4, what's the next highest exponent? Yep, so this whole term here, negative 18x squared, that's going to go next. Okay, and then Erica, do you think you can tell me what goes after that? Yeah, the 2x, good. So it's a positive 2x, so we're going to keep the plus with it. Okay, and then Joey, what's going to go last? That, and then what's going to, so what's the only term we haven't written down yet? That we did the 2x, and then the only thing that I haven't underlined or circled is this, right? So see that negative in front? I just don't want you guys to forget the negative. So it's the negative 5. Okay? Okay, and then Ryan, can you tell me what the leading coefficient is for this one? This one. So what's the first? Yeah, what number's in front of it? Yes, good. Okay, so the leading coefficient is 1 because if you have x to the 4th, that's your first term. Remember how there's a 1 hiding in front? Okay, so if you don't see a number, it's 1. Okay? And if you just saw a negative, it would be negative 1. Alright, and then Stacy, how many terms do I have here? Yep, we have 4 terms. Okay, so when you do the name, I do think it's helpful to write the 2 so you don't forget part of it, because one is based on the degree and the other is based on the terms. Well, not the terms, the terms. Okay, so Avery, can you use your chart and tell me if it's degree 4, what that's called? Quartic, yep. Quartic. So that's the first part. And then the 4 terms, okay, it's not 1, 2, or 3, it's here. So the way that you would write it is this. It's a polynomial with 4 terms. So it's a quartic polynomial with 4 terms. Okay, and that's the whole name. Alright, I've just been rewriting it down there so you can see what you'd write. Quartic polynomial with 4 terms. And anything that's above 4, that's what you call it. It doesn't have a special name. Alright, and then the last thing on this section is evaluating. Whenever directions tell you to evaluate, if you're plugging in a number, your final answer should be a number. Okay, so you have to plug in. It says 2a squared plus 5 minus 3a cubed for a is equal to 2. So whenever you plug something in, we're going to plug it in with parentheses. Okay? You don't have to write this in standard form. We can just plug this in. That's fine. Okay? So this is 2. And then instead of a squared, if a is 2, I'm going to plug in 2 for a. And then I have plus 5 minus 3. Again, I have an a to the power of 3. So any place there's an a, I'm going to plug that in with a 2. Okay, and then you have to follow your order of operations. Do you guys remember what the acronym is? Yes, PEMDAS. Okay, so you're going to do parentheses, exponents, then multiply or divide, okay, then add or subtract. So I put those on the same line because you do them whatever comes first. That means you are not going to multiply this first. You have to do the exponent. Okay, so this is 2, and then you're going to find 2 squared. But a lot of you know 2 squared already. What's 2 times 2? 4. So that becomes 4. 2 squared is 4. Okay, what's the next thing I'm going to have to do? Where's the other exponent? The 3. So I'm going to have to do 2 to the 3rd power first. That, so do 2 times 2 times 2? No, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Yeah. So you can also use your caret key to do that. Alright, now we have to multiply whatever needs to be multiplied together. And really, you can put this part in your calculator as well. 2 times 4 is 8. What's negative 3 times 8? Do you guys know 3 times 8? So this will be minus 24. So if you have a negative and a positive, it'll stay there. Okay, and then that part you can do on your calculator. 8 plus 5 is 13. You could also do 13 minus 24. Okay, so you have negative 11. Okay, so for B, you have 3y plus y to the 4th minus 3y squared plus 5. This is what you're going to plug in, okay? What I recommend is you go through and any place there's a y, put parentheses. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that right now. Okay, so this is really the first step I want you to do, is to make spaces for where you're going to plug that in, okay? So if it's 3y, we're going to plug in negative 1. We're going to plug in negative 1. We're going to plug in negative 1. And don't forget this plus 5 at the end, okay? All right, now, anytime you have a negative and you're plugging it in, it is in parentheses. So when you do negative 1 to the power of 4, if you don't put that in parentheses, it is going to treat that negative that it's on the outside. Okay, so you won't get the correct answer if you don't put that inside your parentheses. Okay, so you have to keep the negative inside the parentheses there. Okay, and feel free to, I want you to write this note down so when you have to do this on your own, you know how to do that. Okay, so we're going to do the exponents first. Okay, so this would be 1. Okay, we're also going to do negative 1 squared. Negative 1 squared is just negative 1 times negative 1. So negative 1 to the power of 2 is a 1. You have the plus 5. Okay, and then we're just going to drop that down. Okay, so what we did is we evaluated the exponents. Now we're going to multiply. So 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. This is plus 1 minus 3 plus 5. So then we did the multiplication. So then your last step is to add and subtract. Okay, and it's fine if you want to do that all on one line. If it starts with a negative, you have to use the negative symbol. Okay, and then what do you get when you total them up? Sometimes what I do is, if I don't have a calculator out, I just do -3 and -3. I know that's -6. 1 plus 5 is 6. What's -6 plus 6? 0. Okay, so 0 is a number. You can get 0 as your final answer. That's okay.